Curiosity may have killed the cat, and curiosity will definitely keep you sharper, happier, and more creative as you age. What's your first thought when you heard me say that? I was doing some research this morning about curiosity and aging and looking for facts and figures, because last night when I went live for the Aging Joyfully journaling experience that we're doing right now, we're day 3, this is the day 3 recap of that, I felt like, oh gosh, I did not hit my marks at all. That's one of the things with live streaming is you're live. So if you miss your marks, you miss your marks. You can't go back and edit. Some people actually like that about live streaming because then they don't have to edit. They just let it be. For me, after that live stream, I just mulled over things in my head. And instead of recording the recap last night, which I might have done, except then I wouldn't have found the research that I found. But I'm glad today that I can come back and recap and add some more information to the recap than I had last night. We're going to talk about curiosity and distractions, or things that seem like distractions, that are actually possibly a part of yourself that is fascinated with something, and you haven't had the room to be fascinated, perhaps since you were much younger. And we're going to explore that in journaling. Or if journaling isn't your thing, you can sketch, doodle, talk to a friend, take photos, meditate. All of those things are valid and valuable, just like you are. If we haven't met, I'm Julie Jordan Scott with Aging Joyfully. That's this channel. And I have been teaching writing workshops for the last 25 years, and I'm finally bringing them to YouTube after being really nervous about bringing my work here. Fear. Fear stops us, doesn't it? William Wordsworth said, fill your paper with the breathings of your heart. And that's what we're attempting to do here with our journaling. We are trusting ourselves, trusting our curiosity, trusting our heart. That's in day 4, coming up next. And today is about stepping into the memories that we have of what we have been fascinated with over time, and how those things may be calling to us, and how to give ourselves permission to seek fascination again. Are you up for that? Yesterday when we explored I remember as a prompt, I remember as a thing. And we went in very much into the senses about our memories, which makes our memories come alive. So I'd like to ask you again to just think about it as I speak, about something that you were fascinated in as a child, or when you were much younger. Might have been early adulthood, might have been early parenting or something. And it was interesting to hear all the things that were coming up for people from their early childhood. Things from a woman, I'll say my friend Pam, you might know her. Pam talked about her fascinated with World War II fighter jets. Now that, I did not see that one coming at all. And that's probably why it stuck with me, because it was so unusual. People talked about taking trails, wandering places. And I'm back at Pam because hers was just so interesting, so intriguing that she brought that up. When we are in our mid-20s to, I'm guessing, mid-30s, 40s, and for some of us beyond that, we are really consumed or interested in what we can do to create a lifelong sense of safety for ourselves. So we're interested in producing an income. We are interested in creating that solid foundation to build the rest of our lives upon. And sometimes we look at our fascinations as frivolous little things that we don't have time to do, or we're distracted by life itself and doing all the things that we've been doing. You know, we might be shuffling kids to school and practices and play dates. We might be volunteering. We might be debating with school people. We might be fighting for something. That was pretty much me for most of my adulthood. I still fight for things. I still stand up for things. But I allow myself more latitude now to follow my fascinations. That actually started much more in my 40s. But for many of us, we stop giving ourselves permission to do those things early on. So I'm going to ask you a question that is a coaching question pretty much, but I'm going to ask you this question because we're going to write towards it during our first journaling prompt. So here's the question. If you were allowed to be curious without worrying about whether your curiosity or fascination was productive, applied to your life in general, provided solutions for someone, or perhaps you could become successful at, what fascination or curiosity might you follow? So don't necessarily actively pan your brain for responses. Just let that simmer for a second. Just let that simmer. This is one of my favorite tricks. In fact, it goes along with in school. You may have been told that when you take a test, one of the best strategies to use is to read through the whole test first. Read through all the questions. The subconscious mind can sift through the information and is more likely to bring you the answer when you get back to that part of the test. I started doing that when I was a junior in college, and my grades went up significantly. The subconscious mind doesn't always have the immediate best answer. So if you haven't used that tactic, you might want to start using it now. So there's the question. I shared last night about some of my curiosities and some of my shut down curiosities. So one of the things that I did when I was little, when I was in elementary school, I was very active in theater in school, all the school plays. Up until 5th grade, I was in them. I usually had a significant role, except for 3rd grade when I should have been Dorothy, and instead I was a member of the chorus. I didn't have the name for that then, but I was a flying monkey and a munchkin, and so upsetting. But by the 4th grade, I was Mrs. Santa Claus, so I worked my way up. I love the stage. I love performing. I love singing. Was always doing all the performance stuff. I kept singing for most of my school years, and then I abruptly stopped in college, which was too bad. A part of me wishes I'd kept it up in college. And then I graduated to karaoke, but I kept singing. I love singing. There's something that happens to my body when I sing. It just makes me happy. Perhaps you have things like this that you did when you were a child. They might not be fascinations like World War II fighter jets. They might not be fascinations like me believing that Bobby Sherman wrote "Julie, Do You Love Me" for me. I could still talk about that for hours. But that kind of goes along the same lines. What are those things you can talk about for hours that nobody else really cares about, but you find fascinating? I have a lot of those too. Literary grannies, 19th century women writers who nobody's ever heard about. Again, trivia. And trivia can be very fun as well, as evidenced by my Monday Gratitude and Intention live stream, which turned into basically a trivia conversation with everybody sharing their different things like William Shatner moments. And I was laughing so hard at the end. And it was interesting because oftentimes in the intention, people want to feel peaceful or content. And wow, did we ever feel peaceful and content? Sometimes it shows up in different ways, which is just how curiosity works. So if we want to continue to age joyfully, let's get curious and let's get down to our first prompt, which is to respond to that thought. If I were allowed to be curious without worrying about being productive, making money, being successful or famous, what would I explore? I would explore ... I would explore ... And write for 3 to 5 minutes. If you get caught up and you have nothing more to write, go back to writing, I would explore, I would explore, I would explore, and see what comes up. I'll be right back here when you're done with that writing. I got this definition of curiosity from the National Institutes for Health, so I'm going to read it directly from the document, so I'm sure I get it right. Curiosity is broadly defined as a desire to learn, experience, or explore new information or environments. True. But I've also learned in doing my curiosity research that there are two forms of curiosity that kind of take different levels of influence as we age. One is trait curiosity, and that is like the instinct of our curiosity that starts when we're little children and tends to be up here as children, and then this is the one that tends to, researchers have found, has trails off as we age. But there's another kind of curiosity called state curiosity. So that's like being in a state of curiousness, or my preference to think of it as a state of wonder. When we look at something and we go, I wonder about that. I wonder about that. Now, of course, I'm distracted because there was a thinker whose name I can't remember who talked about falling asleep with a wonder, not a worry, which I have tried to practice over the years. But wonder, state curiosity, is the kind of curiosity that helps us as we continue to age. And according to UCLA and the National Institutes for Health here, there is that thought that if we stay curious, if we stay in a state of wonder, attentiveness, and mindfulness, this will indeed have an impact not only on the quality of life, but there are some studies that are starting to see that it has an impact on our risk for some of those big words that some of us aren't comfortable saying, Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So we talked about what fascinated us as children. What were we interested in? Where were we the most excited to spend our time? And that is sort of like, Hansel and Gretel left out those breadcrumbs and then the birds came along and ate the breadcrumbs so they couldn't find their way home. It's sort of like that with us as adults, especially after we've gone past that stage where we're no longer as worried about productivity. We're no longer as worried about, gee, will I be famous? Although I still am ambitious, I will confess, that's probably a trait of mine in my blood, that I do have some level of ambition, which I sometimes apologize for, or I've been apologetic for, probably why it took me so long to get onto YouTube and do my writing here. So I'm wondering if you had any insights from your first journaling exercise. Did you find out or remember new things? Did you notice what you would be open to exploring more? Did anything surprise you? I would love for you to take that and continue to follow that into our next prompt. And please put that in the comments. Put that in the comments. So now that we've thought about what we were curious about as children and what we're curious about now, what we'd like to explore now, I would like for you to think about, now that I've stated that I'm curious about this, I'm fascinated by this, how could you express that fascination or that curiosity tomorrow? What are some things you might do? We're going to take 3 minutes to do this. And if you are particularly brave, I would ask you to add the bonus. What has a tendency to get in the way of you following your fascinations? What belief stops you from being curious or seeking out wonder? Let's write our way into that. Let's take 3 to 5 minutes to write about what will you do tomorrow to nurture, explore, or follow that fascination. And at the tail end of that, look at what tends to get in your way. Not to make that manifest, but to just recognize it so that when it pops up, you know what's happening. Begin writing, and I will be here when you're done. Curiosity is one of the ways that our future finds us. And I'm so grateful that you have found us here and have been participating in this series. Whether this is the first time you've shown up and you're like, hey, this looks interesting, a sign of wonder and curiosity. or if you've been around since Monday when we started. If you're brand new here, you can follow along on the playlist, and these sessions are all made to be individual anyway. But if you'd like to come back tomorrow, we're going to be talking about trusting your heart and following your heart. So some of this state of wonder and curiosity will continue to grow, which is really exciting. So I'd love to close out this session with gratitude. What are you grateful for that showed up during the session? And or what are you grateful for from the day in general, for what you've been learning, what you've been applying, and what you've set aside, what you've let go of? So our last prompt today is, I am so grateful. I am so grateful, ... I am so grateful. Let's take 3 minutes on this one. Ready? Let's write. Hooray! What are some of those noticings that you're grateful for? I'd love it if you would put it in the comments. And as we close out today, I would like to remember that we have discerned that we can trust our process. We can trust what we discover and uncover during the prompted journaling. We can trust our memories. And in fact, we can hold our memories close with joy rather than shame. We can come up and step into them again from a new place of wonder. And we can trust our curiosity, and things that seem like distractions may actually be inviting you to your brightest next chapter of life. So instead of pushing them away like I did with my, no, I'm a stage mom, no, I'll take this voice class, but it's just because I'm a radio host and I want to keep my voice strong. Realize that sometimes those nudgings have a purpose beyond what we understand at first. So thank you so much for writing along with us. It is a pleasure to be in your life, and I look forward, as always, to seeing you on the next video. How many bloopers? 6. I got a phone call that time. So my friend pointed out to me that not only had I diminished her, marginalized her, looked down on her, was patronizing. I think it was patronizing is the actual word she may have used. And she may have been right. In fact, I think she was right. It probably was patronizing. And I apologize profusely for that. And then every time we were together, I was like so worried that everything I said was curated before I said it. There's another word that has slipped my brain. As an American in today's world, I should realize this word very well, but I was not allowed to say certain things. I felt like I couldn't say things. What's that word? You can tell me. 7 bloopers. But the thing is that she also pointed out that I laughed. Oftentimes I would say something patronizing or rude, and then I would laugh. And I realized that as I was editing this video, I was laughing a lot. I would make a statement, I would laugh. And I know that I laugh a lot, either because I am nervous, I am joyful, I am embarrassed. So if you notice me laughing, most of the time it's because I'm joyful or I just made a mistake. So a little bit of self-observation that I just felt like I wanted to confess. And also because something like that could become a block for you and could keep you from following your fascinations. I am not going to risk it. I see that I'm still recording. This has been somewhat of a success, and I'm just going to keep on keeping on. My adventures as an adult, and I've had quite a few, sometimes I'm told I've had an interesting life. I have not had a conventional life, I will give you that. My life has not been a straight line, up the corporate ladder, any of that. I opted out of that at the ripe old age of 37. Most of my life in my 20s and 30s relates to pregnancies. Who was I pregnant with? What was going on? And Emma was 2. That's how I know I was 37. That's a whole other story for another day. But my taking kayaking lessons, I've talked about that. My stepping into acting after a 20-year hiatus, that was exactly what we're talking about here. I went from, no, I'm not acting, I'm a stage mom. No, I'm not acting, I could never do that. I'll take a singing lesson because I want to keep my voice primed. And the fact that I took singing classes and stuck with that for 2 different sessions and then wanted more and fell into an acting class as a consolation prize that led to a huge transformation in my life. I followed my wonder. I wonder what it would be like to take this singing class. I actually signed up for that singing class when I was signing my kids up for acting lessons. So parents, if your kids are still little, if you're taking your grandchildren to acting classes, watch out. And by the way, improv would be fantastic no matter what you're doing. Improv is a fantastic skill, and I'll probably be making a video about one of those techniques shortly because it came up before today in a video, responding to a video to one of our very own, Jules. Freya is asking me, when the heck are you going to get done with this video? Can't you please just play with me for a little while? But seriously, watch a video, playlist, hang out more. I'm truly grateful for you being here and for putting up with my mistakes, my errors, but hopefully you see my passion, my wonder, my curiosity, and good stuff rather than just the not so great.